Introduce yourself.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Happy spooky time, everybody. My name is Brad.
And I'm Sean.
I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and tonight I am in my dining room again with some coffee.
I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in my guest room. I got my bookshelf, my movies, baby Groot over there, a guitar, and I'm drinking coffee as well.
Nice. Sean is my brother-in-law, and when we get together, we love to talk about movies and music and TV shows. But unfortunately, now that he lives across the country, we have to do it from a distance. Sean, when I look at my screen, I see that we have somebody else is here with us. What's going on?
Yes. Well, since we're doing a special episode today, a ranking video, we decided to have a special guest, and it's none other than my brother. Matt, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're at?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm super excited about this one. So thank you for including me. I am actually also in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in my living room and enjoying a glass of whiskey. Cheers.
Cheers.
So why am I on this video?
So this is going to be a video of our top 5 favorite horror movies of all time. And so what that means is that it's our favorite. Doesn't matter what you think. We want to hear what you think down in the comments after you smash the like button. But this is our individual lists. So if Aladdin scares Sean, he can have it on this list. There's no rules. Any movie that exists is allowed to be on our list because it's our list. So the way this is going to work is we're each going to go one at a time, revealing our 5s and then our 4s and 3, 2, 1 until we get to 1, which is going to be our favorite horror movie of all time. So since you're our guest, Matt, you're going to kick us off. What's your number 5?
Gosh, this is a lot of pressure, and I'm just going to jump right into it. At number 5, I have It. Not just It, and a lot of people may not agree with this, but the 2017 It, specifically. Directed by Andy Muschietti. I hope I'm saying that right. Starring Bill Skarsgård and all of the lovely kids that are in that movie. They all did a terrific job. Rotten Tomatoes score on this film was 86 on critics. And for whatever it's worth, 84 user. And the reason that I love this movie so much is whenever I heard that they were going to remake the film, I wasn't devastated, but the first one, I had childhood horrors of just thinking about the first time that I watched it. I can remember where I watched that movie and the way that I felt about clowns, and I think it just carried with me forever and ever. And whenever I heard they were going to remake it, I was excited, but I was very, very nervous, and I wasn't expecting a whole lot. And whenever I saw that film, I was intrigued and exhilarated the whole time that I was watching it, the remake. I was incredibly surprised at how well it was done and in kind of Andy, the director's take on it, the mixing comedic in with horror. I was truly scared in some points of the movies, and then at others I was laughing hysterically. I really loved the movie, and it made number 5 on my favorite list.
All right, Matt. Excellent choice. What do you got for number 5?
All right. So number 5, man, I have to tell you, this list was hard to put together. Number 5, I have John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. It's got a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics. And this movie stars Jamie Lee Curtis. I think it was one of her breakout roles back in the day. And it's a father of all the slasher films that came after it. The soundtrack is great. It's something that I play around every Halloween. So I love it. I think it's a great movie for the time. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Sean. Now it's time for my number 5. And I got to say, this is like the hardest decision of my entire life. This was so painful. And this list could fluctuate day to day. For me, for this list, it just came back to what do I revisit the most? What do if somebody says, hey, this is on, let's watch it. am I going to go back and just keep watching it over and over again? And so my number 5 is Jeepers Creepers, the first one. Came out in 2001, had Justin Long, guy from the cell phone commercials. Didn't do much else, but this movie is cuckoo nonstop, okay? It is pure nonsense. It has one of my favorite monster villains of any movie and a killer ending. Just an ending that it's a heartbreaking ending to it. It's also a movie that me and my wife love to watch together, and I think that it also has a fantastic sequel that is equally cuckoo. Tragically, this movie has a 46 on Rotten Tomatoes. That's my number 5. So there we go. That's our number 5s. Matt, what do you think about those number 5s?
I have to say, those are some great picks. I'm a little bit surprised by Halloween. I'll elaborate maybe a little bit later on that. Jeepers Creepers is one of my favorite scary movies. It's funny, we were actually talking about that before the show, about how great a movie that is, and I actually totally forgot to even think about it. So thanks, Brad, for reminding me to go back and watch that one again.
That is my pleasure, sir. So now we're going to kick it to number 4, and it is back to Matt. What you got?
For my number 4 movie, I'm taking it back. I have Psycho from 1960.
Nice.
The reason that this movie made it so high on my list is a little bit of nostalgia, actually. When I think about this movie, I think about my dad. I think about this was the first movie that he actually allowed us to watch as kids. And so when I watched it, I was pretty freaked out by it. And then as I got older, I realized like how great of a film it was. And as Sean mentioned with Halloween, I feel like this one, Alfred Hitchcock, the father of horror, this just kind of kicked off a lot of what we see today. It's a great movie. There's a ton of spinoffs. There's TV shows. It stars Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. Rotten Tomato gives this movie 96 critics and 95 users. But yeah, that was my number 4 pick.
Excellent choice as well. What about you, Sean? What do you have for number 4?
Well, first, I just wanted to say, yeah, I liked your pick, Matt. It was very nostalgic. But for number 4, we must be brothers because I picked It from 2017. It's got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, directed by Andy Muschietti, and it's starring Bill Skarsgård. Man, what do I say about this movie? Whenever I saw it in the theaters, I was blown away. I was super excited because I loved the original It, and from what I saw from the trailers and everything, it just looked visually stunning, and I just had that feeling that it was going to be an instant classic for me. It relies on compelling storytelling and childhood fears rather than just jump scares, which I liked, and Bill Skarsgård absolutely kills it. His take on Pennywise is completely different than the old one, but it's fresh in a new way, and the opening scene of that movie is just perfect, and it's something that'll stick with me forever. So with that, you can go ahead and move on.
You must be brothers indeed. So I'm going to comment on these number 4s. Psycho, definitely all-time classic. I guess I can't say whether or not it made it on my list, but an excellent pick, definite throw way back. But as far as it, this is going to be a shocker. On my master list of 47 movies that I had to trim this down to, I did have It Part 1 only on there, and then also I had the 1990 TV show, and I crossed off the new one first. The original means so much more to me because I watched it as like a 10-year-old, and it just ravaged my entire being mentally. So terrifying. So I totally agree with having it on there. For me, I go with The Ridge. With that, I'll lead into my number 4. Okay, my number 4 is Cabin in the Woods. Absolutely one of my favorites of all time, obviously, if it's on this list. But it came out in 2011, has a much thinner and un-Thor-like Chris Hemsworth. This movie is so cool because it mocks and in some ways just spits on the genre of horror. Takes the whole cabin in the woods concept and just makes a joke out of it pretty much. But it is scary. It is scary enough to be a horror movie, but it has enough comedy to toe the line perfectly. Also, just like Jeepers Creepers that I mentioned earlier, this ending is over the top, nuts, and so memorable. It's a movie that I know that I will watch over and over and over again. And I recommend this movie constantly to people. And Rotten Tomatoes has this one at a 91. So that was good. So that's all of our number 4s. Now it's time to move on to lucky number 3. And we got Lucky Matt. What you got?
Ooh, lucky number 3. I feel like some people aren't going to agree with this, but I have at number 3, The Conjuring,
Okay.
2013. Directed by James Wan the Great, in my opinion, starring Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. I hope I said her name right. Rotten Tomatoes gave this movie an 85, and it made number 3 for me because when I watched it for the first time, I found it absolutely terrifying. I don't know about the rest of you, but I enjoyed it. I stayed in my seat, and every minute of the movie, I'm like cringing and trying not to watch, but I unexplainably I loved the movie. And yeah, my notes, I mean, I just put that it was scary as hell, and I still recommend it to people, and I still watch their movies that seem to be constantly coming out every year now. But
Yeah.
that's my number 3.
Man, that's a great pick right there. I'm scared actually, just the fact that when you're talking about it, I was actually getting nervous about the movie. So moving on, Sean, what's your number 3?
Well, Brad, as you can see behind me, I got 2 movies up there. Kind of hard to see. One's the Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. The other one is The Conjuring. And that's my number 3 pick as well. It's got an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's from 2013. Director James Wan, definitely one of my favorite horror directors. It was so hard for me not to put Saw and what was the other one on there? I can't think of it right now. But and it's starring Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine Warren. And this movie is terrifyingly haunting. The creepiest visuals I've ever seen in a movie, and stuff that sticks with me today. I couldn't sleep for probably a week after I saw it. I think I saw it with Matt, and we were talking about it constantly. And I own it, so that means that I love it. It gives you just enough in each scene to bring chills. The characters are so well developed. You care about not only Ed and Lorraine, but also the family that's being haunted. Because they're good people, and they're just trying to figure out what's going on and protect especially like the dad's trying to protect his family. All of that comes together with a great finale, and this film has spawned a horror universe, and it set the standard for modern horror.
Wow, you guys really are brothers. I mean, seriously, do you guys compare lists or what?
No, I swear.
No. All right, my number 3, and we're really getting into the thick of it now. Man, this was so hard for placement purposes, but my number 3 is Evil Dead 2, an absolute all-timer. It came out in 1987. It's got crazy Bruce Campbell in this, and one of my favorite things about this movie is the whole thing's over the top, but like the first half-ish is really, really, really scary. And then it just goes off the rails, and the second half is just really, really, really funny. And just it's got to be the most over-the-top movie I've ever seen. I have in my notes that it's one of the funniest movies ever and one of the scariest movies ever. Depending upon where my brain's at, if somebody says Evil Dead 2, I'm oh my gosh, the person in the cellar or whatever. And then, or if I'm in a certain mood, I'm thinking of the hand running around the kitchen, and he's trying to catch it or destroy it or whatever. And another thing that I really like about this is that it's the inverse of my number 4, Cabin in the Woods. They're like they both have comedy elements and horror elements, but this is like a pioneer of the Cabin in the Woods style. It's like almost like Cabin in the Woods is riffing on this movie specifically. It's got a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes, which I was actually shocked that was that high. But that's my number 3. And Sean, I want to hear what you think about these number 3s.
All right. Well, of course, I love Matt's number 3 because it was the same as mine. But I just think that just shows that we're brothers. And hey, what can I say? Great minds think alike. But also with yours, number 3, Evil Dead 2, a classic for me as well. I didn't see it until I was probably 18, maybe 16, 17, 18, something like that. I watched all 3 of the Evil Dead movies and loved every single one of them. But Evil Dead 2 is definitely my favorite out of all of those. So I love those picks for number 3. But with that, let's just go ahead right along to number 2. We're winding down.
All right. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. It's time for the runner-ups. Matt, what's your number 2?
All right. My number 2. And I keep going back and forth on this, whether I should have even included it in my top 5. But I really love this one as well. At number 2, I have It Follows. 2015, directed by David Robert Mitchell. Starred, these names, Maika Monroe and Keir Gilchrist. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics loved this one. They gave it a 96. The reason that I loved it, though, I remember sitting in the theater, and again, similar to the other ones, and I hate to be repetitive, but I was intrigued the whole time. I was on the edge of my seat kind of watching. I liked to me, this started the remake of the 80s feel. And, we love 80s horror films. I feel like this is the first one, and it led to then, Stranger Things and other movies now that brought back the feel of an older horror film. I like the creativity that the director chose to use in this film. And, I think it's just the modern 80s vibe. And again, this is one that after I left the theater, I thought about a lot. I watched it several times, and I loved it.
I do remember you highly recommending that movie to me, and I have not seen it. So that's the first one of the day that someone has not seen. I feel bad about this, but Sean, what you got for number 2?
All right, number 2. Evil Dead 2.
Ooh, yes.
It's got a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was made in 1987, directed by Sam Raimi, one of the greats. Did the Spider-Man trilogy and Drag Me to Hell, which is a great movie as well. Starring Bruce Campbell. This movie, I mean, you already said it all, but it's the perfect blend of horror and comedy together. I wasn't really sure what I was watching the first time I watched it because it's basically just a remake of the first one, which is a horror movie, but it adds in way better effects, practical effects than the first one. And then also Henrietta in the basement got to me. That's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. And she's like, Henrietta coming to get you. So, it lasted with me forever. I love this movie, and I love the sequel as well. So that's all I got to say.
Man, that's a great pick. I'm not going to lie. All right. So for my number 2, man, this is super obvious. My number 2 is Scream. Came out in 1996. That was when I was 13. So this was like the biggest movie yet that had come out in my early teens, So huge deal. I saw it in the theater, actually, at 13 years old. Had Neve Campbell, Drew Barrymore, Courtney Cox, and a ton of other great actors that were already great that just did a lot more really cool stuff after that. This is a perfect balance of like every single genre. And it's totally self-aware, which I really, really love about it. And but the coolest thing about this movie for me is that really, I mean, it's a horror, it's got comedy, it's got everything. But this is a whodunit. This is a mystery. From the beginning to the very end, it's a whodunit. And even when it's done, you're still like, I know they done it, but I feel there's got to be more going on here. So I love that. This movie to me has a flawless script. Like it's just a perfectly made, well-crafted 90s style movie, and it's the front runner to a whole generation of teen horror. But I am in shock. This movie has a 71 on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't understand what happened there. The critics definitely missed it on this one. But that's my number 2. So we're getting there. Sean, what do you think about these number 2s?
Great picks all around. I love It Follows. Matt showed me that one, and it was hard for me. It's definitely on my list of my top horror movies, but it just didn't make it today. But so that's a great one. Definitely great 80s vibe, and brings back the slasher genre as well, kind of, but with a unique spin on it. And then Brad, Scream, for me, I like the movie, but I didn't see it until I was older, and it just didn't stick with me as well as all these other movies. But great pick as well.
So this was the hardest list of all time to make, I think. And so what we did was we are allowing one honorable mention. But that honorable mention, we don't get to choose our honorable mention. It's going to be picked at random from our master list. So they're going to be picked at random off camera. All right, we are back. And we have selected our honorable mentions. We're at random from each of our lists. So here we go. Let's dive deeper into that list, Matt. What you got for an honorable mention?
All right, for my honorable mention, from the creators of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Cabin in the Woods. Brad, as you mentioned earlier, this is one that I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I don't know. I can't remember what they revealed in the trailer, but I remember when I saw the movie, I'm like, this is pretty freaky. This is a scary movie. And then I was completely surprised by the ending. But I loved it. I thought it had the perfect mix of comedic relief and true horror. It was hilarious at the time. I'm just gonna say Chris Hemsworth, right? Hemsworth. Sorry, we'd seen him. We hadn't seen him in a role like this, and I when I saw him fly off that cliff and into like a force field and die, this was great. This was a great movie. Rotten Tomatoes, as you mentioned earlier, gave this one 91, and made my list.
An excellent honorable mention. Honorable indeed. Sean, what you got for your honorable mention?
I gotta say those the Merman or whatever. All right, so my honorable mention is Secret Window. It's got a 46%. It stars Johnny Depp. I'd say it's more of a mystery thriller than it is straight horror. But something about this movie, even though the critics didn't seem to really like it, it just always stuck with me. It was one that I watched a lot, and I actually own this one. It's got that mystery to it about a struggling writer, and he's got a secret that he's trying not to spill, and he's got this cop that's over his shoulder all the time. And it just it keeps you guessing the entire movie. And it has a great finale with a twist ending for sure. So I just love this movie. Critics didn't really like it too much, but that's my honorable mention. All right, Brad, what was your honorable mention?
This is a deeper dive, literally. Literally, we're going deep for this one. I have as my honorable mention, picked at random from 47 movies, 2005's The Descent. Man, this movie was crazy to watch. I'm pretty sure we all watched it together, actually, I'm glad that it ended up on our honorable mentions. I think we sat in the living room and just watched it like the middle of just a random night or whatever. But it's one of the it's so claustrophobic. You're trapped in these caves with these girls, and it's one of the scariest, tightest movies I've ever watched. It is an almost all-female cast, which gives it a very nice touch. A bunch of tough girls in these caves. Really good, really fun movie. And then I have in my notes the word bloodbath. That's all a literal bath of blood is what's going on in the finale of this movie. So that's my honorable mention. All right, it's time for the number ones. And so to decide our order of who's going to give their number ones, I have these fancy pieces of paper to draw from. So I'm drawing it, and we've got me to go first. All right. My number one, anybody who knows me knows this is my favorite franchise of all time. And my number one, without question, is Halloween, the Orig from 1978. Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance. Sean mentioned a lot of this stuff earlier, but this is the movie that started it all. I mean, with the exception of Psycho, this is the next big, iconic, long-lasting horror movie. In my opinion, this is one of the very few perfect movies. I can watch this movie and I would not want to change one single thing about this movie. I do have some nostalgia. I watched this with my dad, and then I went on to watch the sequels. That's a whole nother video. To me, this franchise can do no wrong, except for Rob Zombie. Can do no wrong. This is pure horror in its most basic form, and to me, this movie is without blemish. And also, I will note that the gap between my number 2 and my number 1 is really big. So it's not even close for me. This has a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. So moving on to the next number 1 is going to be a little guy named Sean.
All right. My number 1, it's a classic. It's Alien. It's got a 97%. It's made in 1979. The director, the great Ridley Scott, fantastic director. He can do pretty much any genre, but he definitely nailed this one with horror in space with an unstoppable creature. This is starring Sigourney Weaver. So it's another one from back in the day that had a strong female in the lead that rightfully so paved the way for a lot of other female characters. The score is unsettling the entire time. It's terrifying. You don't see the monster for a little while, except you do see that starting scene where the alien pops out of the guy's chest. I'll never forget that one. I didn't watch this until I was older because I couldn't watch it as a kid. But whenever I did see it, I fell in love with the franchise. Even the worst movies I still love, and the prequels I love as well. So that's my number 1.
Dude, that is a fantastic pick for number 1. I have some things to say about that hopefully I can say later on. But let's get these number 1s capped off. Let's see what we got here. Matt.
All right. That's me. Yeah. For my number 1, Brad, you may have a little bit of influence on this one, but I got to go with Michael Myers, man. I got to go Halloween, 1978. Just piggybacking on what you said. This led the way. Going back and watching behind the scenes on the budget they had. I heard it was written in 20 hours or something crazy like that. Don't quote me on that. Maybe it was 20 days, but not a lot went into the production and into this film. And, when we get towards this time of the year, right around Halloween, I think about this movie. Rotten Tomatoes, 96. I think it's a solid choice.
All right, and as a bonus, we decided that we would average together everybody's Rotten Tomato scores individually and divide by 6. So this includes our honorable mentions. And our winner of the best Rotten Tomatoes critic score average is our guest, Matt, with a 91.7 average. Great picks. The critics critics definitely agree with you. Sean came in second with 84.7, and I came in dead last at 81.2. But I disagree with that because Scream is not a 71. But moving on from that, Matt, thank you so much for being a part of our ranking video today. It was a pleasure to have you, and we hope to have you back soon.
Absolutely. I'd love to be back. I love that you guys invited me on this one specifically. And yeah, thank you.
All right. So with that, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. Please remember to smash that like button like Brad had said earlier and subscribe for weekly content. And also remember to comment down below and let us know what you thought about our list and also give us your top 5. So with that, please always remember to watch from a distance.